Here we go. Chapter 20.
Informants. No promises. Olivia. By 2008, Junior and Peter's organization was pumping almost $50 million worth of cocaine onto U.S. streets every month, and they had over 100 employees in 10 cities. Yet they hadn't stepped foot on American soil in almost 5 years. They were fugitives, and if they'd taken that risk, they would have been arrested on the spot.
Mia. They had to take precautions, so they steered clear of the United States no matter what, even to talk to their lawyer about how to become the biggest drug informants in U.S. history. Someone had to fly to Chicago to lay the groundwork, though. It wasn't going to be them, and it didn't make sense for it to be me either. Junior and Peter's lawyer was just a voice on the phone to me, and I didn't have the background or the experience to effectively relay all that he needed to know. "Who's going to do it?" asked Peter one night. "Olivia," Junior said, no question. We all turned and looked at her, knowing she'd be perfect.
She's the go-to.
Olivia. It had to be me. After all, I'd had a relationship with Junior and Peter's lawyer, Joe Bonelli, long before I got together with Junior. When I was married to Kay and the government asked me to wear a wire to gain intelligence against him, I decided I needed to talk to a lawyer, so I'd called Joe. He'd defended people in the drug trade, and on the street he was considered to be the best in the business. He'd also represented Peter and Junior's employees, wholesalers, and countless other big drug conspiracy cases in Chicago. He defended Adrian before he was sent to prison in the 1990s, and he'd stayed in touch with Junior and Peter over the years. He seemed to care about them, in fact. He never failed to ask about our family, and when I called and told him I needed to meet with him in Chicago, he seemed genuinely pleased. Joe had always been sharp. He was tall and handsome and wore nice, tailor-made suits, so he looked the part, but he acted it too. He was a great speaker, really commanding. I'd never seen him stumble. If anything, he was so confident he almost seemed cocky. But in March 2008, when I walked into his fancy office in the Loop,
leave it to the twins and Val to shake them up. They shook them.
All business, and started talking, he became a different person. Junior and Peter want to tell everything they know about Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, Arturo Beltran, and Ismael El Mayo Zambada. I said their first and last names and nicknames just to be totally clear and avoid any confusion.
No confusion.
Chapo wasn't all over the news like he is now, and most Americans, aside from the government, hadn't heard of him. Junior and Peter have been working with the cartels for 4 years, and they know where the bosses are hiding. They're willing to do anything to bring them down. Joe sat behind his big wooden desk with his mouth wide open.
Shook.
He was holding a pen in his hand, but I think he'd forgotten that he wanted to take notes because he suddenly stared at the papers at his desk and hunched over, then started writing really fast. I realized he didn't know what to ask, so I kept on talking. I can tell you exactly how many tons Junior and Peter are bringing in every month, how many workers they have, and where the tunnels are that they use to get loads across the border. Chapo's been investing in submarines, and he's asking them to purchase rocket launchers from the military.
She just dropped a 2-ton duffel bag of info right there, just in that little boom right there. Submarines, that's all you gotta say, submarines and tunnels.
And Junior and Peter own a fleet of tractor trailers they use to transport loads. Slow down, stop.
Yeah.
Did you say rocket launchers?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I forgot the rocket launcher.
They'll tell you every single detail of their business and how they're working with the cartels. They want to cooperate. Fully. I put extra emphasis on that last word. Joe finally looked up and paused. He was thinking. Then he started talking slowly. So, if I call this DEA agent I've worked with, maybe he can tell me exactly what you need to do. He went a little white. Wait, you don't have a wire on you, do you? What? A wire. Is anyone listening? Why the hell would I be recording you? Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. Sorry. I'd known this guy for years, and he was usually cool as a cucumber.
He
He
shook.
never got paranoid. Then I realized I was putting him in a sticky situation. He was a kick-ass defense attorney who represented guys on the street, like regular drug dealers, and he probably didn't want to be known as the person who represented snitches.
Especially for the biggest bust that they got at the time. That guy was used to winning. He was his mission was to go out there and win. He's shook right now. He's wondering if this is a whole setup. He don't know what to think at the moment.
No one likes a rat, and they like their lawyers even less. To top it off, even though Joe had 10 times more experience with the drug trade than any other lawyer in Chicago, one of his clients cooperating with the government on the international stage was on a whole different level. He wasn't just nervous. He might even be in over his head. Look, relax, I said. I brought a secure phone. Let's call my husband and Peter.
Mia. Olivia had given us a heads up that she'd probably call us from Joe's office, but Peter and Junior and I were still so nervous, sitting there in our penthouse with Brandon. We had no idea if Joe would even want to take the case, and we were really depending on Liv to tell him everything.
At the moment, Joe wants to get out of Dodge.
Plus, I couldn't stop feeling strange. We had this secret that no one else knew, and it occupied my mind constantly. I trusted Peter completely, and I knew his decision was 100% in my best interest. But still, I was seeing him and everything in a new light. When the phone rang, Peter grabbed it and proceeded to tell Joe absolutely everything he and Junior wanted to do. Then he put it on speaker so we all could hear. "Peter, Junior, Mia, hello," Joe said deliberately. "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" Junior spoke up. "Absolutely, we're sure." "Because there's no turning back." "Yes, definitely," said Peter. Then he stopped. "But do you want to do this?" Joe paused.
Hell no.
"Do I have a choice? I don't want you guys to talk to the wrong people and then have something happen to you and your families. Just let me make some calls. I need to reach the right people." Peter leaned in toward the phone and lowered his voice. "Joe, listen to me. Be careful who you contact, because half of the people we know in Chicago and half of the people you represent have ties to the cartels. Chapo and Mayo have lawyers and officials on both sides of the border who weed out rats and snitches. They report to them weekly. If anybody finds out what we're doing, they will kill my whole fucking family. You got that?" "I got it." "So what's gonna happen next?" Peter asked. "I'll call you after I speak to the feds. After that, the ball's in their court." "But you've got our backs, right?" Junior asked. "I do." Joe went quiet for a second. "Look, I can't promise you what kind of deal you'll get, and I can't even promise the amount of prison time you'll get, but I'll give you my word that I'll defend you no matter what. I'm on your side from here on out. That's probably the only promise you'll get this whole time." "We trust you," Junior said. "I'll call you in a few days. I hope. No promises." Then Joe hung up. The next thing we knew, Olivia was on a flight home.
Olivia. No promises became the theme of those first few months Junior and Peter were cooperating.
None.
Like, sure, we'll tell you we're assigning a bunch of agents to your case, and they'll probably call you at some point, but we can't promise when. Or, give us all the intelligence you can, but we can't promise you how it might affect your case.
Or your life.
We knew nothing, like absolutely zero in the beginning. The only thing we could do was try to take care of our situation at home, which meant deciding who'd meet with the feds, whenever the hell they did call. It didn't take Peter long to make a decision. "I don't trust the feds," he said. "When we meet with them, they could arrest us and extradite us right then and there. We can't go together." "Then what are you thinking?" Junior asked. "I'll go alone. I can't separate you from Brandon. If he loses you right now, I couldn't live with myself." Junior looked at Peter and slowly nodded his head. There wasn't even a need to say thank you. They were in this together, like they'd always been. Junior had put his life on the line during Peter's kidnapping, flying into the mountains to meet with Chapo and hammering out an arrangement to free him. Making sacrifices for each other was just what they did. We planned and we waited. Joe was our only lifeline.
Mia. We called Joe all the time, and he was patient and reassuring most of the time, but sometimes he was as concerned as we were. "It's going to take a while," he'd say, "and seriously, I wonder if you boys are doing the right thing." Joe had come to realize what we had, that Junior and Peter were making an unheard-of decision.
And they were just hung out there. They don't know when the feds are coming. They don't know what help they're going to get. And maybe this, maybe that. Maybe I snatch you up and take you. Whatever, we'll figure it out there. The whole time, they're thinking, well, we've already talked to Joe about this. We've already put Joe to handle it with the feds. The word is out there. I just told you, Chapo got dudes that check in every week. Lawyers on both sides of the fence, both sides of the border, both sides of the war. Everybody weeding out snitches. They gotta suffer through those tense, what was it, months? It was like 9 months or something like that. On their own, just hung out there. And then when the time came, they're thinking they're gonna get some help. They're gonna get some I Spy type equipment. They got nothing. They say, figure it out for yourself. And they did.
By far the most difficult one they'd ever made. They were doing what few people in their right minds would even consider, risking their lives by walking away from the drug trade at the height of their careers. We finally heard from a DEA agent named Sam in April, who wanted to set up an initial meeting between Peter and the feds in Cancun soon. To Junior and Peter, it was one of the most gut-wrenching conversations of their lives. The second they picked up the phone and said hello, they officially became rats.
Olivia. I think that call made the whole situation hit home. After that, they were beyond sick. They completely went against everything that had been instilled in them since childhood, because growing up, the feds were the bad guys, the enemies. They were the people who'd sent their dad away before they were born. They were the guys who'd helped put away Adrian. In their minds, they'd always been doing what they needed to do to support their families. Sure, they were making excuses to justify their wrongdoings, but coming from where they did and being bred into the world they were, that was the way it had always been. I knew Junior was scared of walking away and giving up the only life he'd ever known. On top of that, he was worried I'd lose respect for him. But he'd seen how I'd grown into a different woman since we'd met. I didn't care about what people thought anymore. I loved my family so much, I was willing to accept my husband becoming an informant.
That's another thing they didn't get into in this book that they did get into and were a little bit more honest about in Surviving El Chapo. In Surviving El Chapo, they made it clear that Val was completely against the idea. That's not what we do. They didn't touch on that in here.
He was willing to change his life for me and our children, and I respected and loved him for making such a courageous decision. It was the ultimate gift. To make things right, they knew they had to sacrifice themselves, walk away from their loved ones, and go to prison for a very long time. They were heading down an unknown path, and their lives were going to turn upside down and become a living hell because of it. But they had to break the cycle and do what was right. It was the only thing, and the most selfless thing, they could do for our families and the well-being of our children. Junior and Peter had always said, "It's easier to do wrong and so hard to do right." In the weeks leading up to their first meeting with the feds, for the first real time in their lives, they began doing the latter.
There it is. That was chapter 20, y'all. They are officially informants. They are officially under the thumb of the U.S. government. What benefit they got from that, I don't know, other than maybe not getting life in prison and being rescued from a situation where their whole family could have been wiped out. That was their doing, really. Feds just signed off on it, but they didn't help them with nothing else. Chapter 21, Cartel Wives.
The feds. Mia. The feds scrapped the Cancun meeting. A few weeks later, they set up another one in Cabo San Lucas. But when Peter and I arrived there, we found out that it had been canceled too. The feds hadn't been able to get clearance from the Justice Department. Traveling back home to Guadalajara, we were in a panic. At the airport, the garbage man taking out the bathroom trash looked like a cartel member. Then we saw two American men eating at a fast food restaurant, and I froze up. "Peter," I said, "they look like undercover agents."
They're everywhere.
"Just keep walking and look ahead," he answered. But I realized he didn't disagree with me. He knows as well as I do that dozens of people know about this meeting. We could be ambushed at any moment from both sides, the cartel and the feds.
Olivia. Thank God me and Peter came home safely. When they did, we continued to discuss our plans almost every day. Some discussions were vague and some were specific with names and dates and details. We were scared, so we'd huddle in the bathroom in my house, running all the spa jets, the rain showers, and the 6-person jacuzzi, and whispering together in case one of Chapo's employees was driving by.
You remember that? They hang out in the bathroom with the jacuzzi running on swole so nobody could hear them, having their conversations back there.
Picking up conversations from the airwaves. During one of our bathroom conferences, we came up with a plan B. If Junior or Peter were ever separated from us, Mia and I would get on a private plane and fly to a safe house in Mexicali. There, we'd wait for further instructions. But if they were ever captured or killed, we'd have to flee Mexico and make it to safety in the United States. Then, finally, in May 2008, the feds called again. They wanted Peter to hop on a flight to Monterrey, Mexico, and be prepared to talk. For hours. The feds were ready to hear what he and Junior planned to disclose and who they wanted to betray. And they were prepared to give them instructions on how to become federal informants. Apparently, though, they weren't at all ready for a case this big.
Mia. Peter and I hated the idea of going to Monterrey. Not just because it was so close to the border, but because we'd be entering enemy territory. Monterrey was controlled by Los Zetas, one of Mexico's most dangerous and violent cartels, and they were at war with Sinaloa. The second we got there, Peter was looking over his shoulder. But that didn't stop us from taking a walk the next night before his meeting, something we did every night we were together. "If this doesn't work out, you know where I'm going. I want you to know that I love you, and I did this for us. We'll be fine. You'll be fine," Peter said to me that night. For the first time since he'd decided to cooperate, I began to believe that maybe he was right. Even though the possibility of him going to jail the next day felt very real to us, I thought to myself, if I was strong enough to agree that Peter should change his life, I'm strong enough to live on my own. Joe hadn't given him any promises about what would happen when he sat down with the feds, so we knew an arrest right then and there was possible.
Hell yeah, it's possible.
Still, I felt a small pocket of strength stirring somewhere deep inside me. I needed that confidence the next morning, though. When we woke up and sat together on the edge of the bed, holding hands, our hearts pounding, part of me was convinced it was all going to go south. I couldn't stop thinking, oh my God, this is it. It doesn't matter what he says or does. I'm going to have to raise our baby by myself. "I love you," Peter said as he pulled me toward him. "But I may have to let you go for a little while, so I can hold on to you forever." I was sobbing. This is the hardest thing we've ever had to do. What if they don't let you come back to me? "If they don't," Peter answered, "please take care of yourself and my baby." Then he turned and looked me straight in the eyes. "I'll see you soon. Keep the door locked, and if you see anyone suspicious, leave right away." He stood up and leaned down to kiss me, then my belly. Then he walked out the door.
And think about it, the guys that had been securing them and been their security the whole time or whatever, guys that are working for them that are holding them down, they can't know none of this either. So they got to keep this from everybody. So the only ones that can keep them safe is themselves at this point.
I didn't know when he'd be back, so I stayed in that room, pacing back and forth nervously all day. I kept thinking, what did I let him do? I didn't open up the curtains. I took a few bites of food I'd pulled out of the minibar, but nothing tasted good. I tried to turn on the television, but I was terrified I'd see a news report with Peter's mugshot plastered on the screen, saying he'd been taken away. I'd slept so badly the night before, but I couldn't take a nap. All I could do was wait. And wait. I couldn't stop thinking about what might be happening. I knew how corrupt the cops in Mexico were, especially near the border, and the barbarism of Los Zetas made me sick to my stomach. Peter had demanded that there be no officials from Mexico in the room, but there were going to be American agents in the meeting who were stationed in Mexico. How could we be sure the cartels didn't know what was going on?
You couldn't.
For all I knew, Peter had walked into that hotel and been shot in the elevator.
Absolutely.
The only thing that really reassured me was that our lawyer, Joe, would be there, along with 2 DEA agents who knew their case better than anyone. The agent from Chicago's name was Eric, and he was young, smart, and eager. A case this big was a new world for him, and he needed to learn from Peter and Junior to advance in his career, so he was taking it on with an open mind. He wasn't cocky, like all the other agents they'd run into in the past, and he didn't treat them like criminals. He actually seemed astounded by their courage in putting themselves in such a dangerous predicament. He realized this was a big decision for them, and he knew they wanted to make a difference in their lives. His colleague from Milwaukee was named Matt, and he'd actually been the guy who'd raided Peter and Junior's houses, along with their sister's house back in February 2004. Peter and Junior knew he'd just been doing his job, though. Still, Eric, Matt, and Joe were the only guys Peter felt comfortable with in that room. Everyone else was an unknown, and that was a risk.
It's like a little family reunion going on over there.
Sat there in the dark for 6 long hours before Peter walked in. "Baby, you're back!" I screamed and ran to him. He looked almost as bad as he'd been when he came home from being kidnapped. He was pale and his face was sunken. He seemed bone-tired. He slumped toward the bed, sat down, pulled me close, and started bawling. He looked absolutely defeated. Finally, he began talking. "We went to a hotel and entered through the basement. I took the elevator up with Joe. I thought I was going to throw up, but he was so relaxed, like totally nonchalant. He knocked on the door, and when someone answered, he walked right past him and started talking with everyone else in the room." "How many people were there?" "About 8, other than me, and Joe knew all of them," he said. "The federal prosecutor, whose name is Tom, some U.S. Marshals, a few FBI officials, Eric and his colleague, this agent named Matt, another DEA agent, and Joe. Someone frisked me for weapons, sat me down, and started asking questions."
They easily could have just snatched them up, took off with them, right then and there. Done deal, we got one.
At this point, he'd settled down a little bit. I was trying my best to be calm, but I was terrified. "How did it start?" "I began when I was a kid. I talked about Junior, Adrian, and our dad. I went through everything, getting kidnapped in Chicago, leaving the country and building up our business from here and how it all works. I went from A to Z." "How did they react?" "Everyone except Joe sat there with their mouths open. Some female agent from Milwaukee was running the show." He paused. "Joe sat there with his feet kicked up on the end table half the time." I couldn't fucking believe it. My husband was about to rat out the cartels, and not only was a small-town agent running things, but our lawyer was acting like he was thinking about hitting the beach. Then again, he was a distinguished lawyer in the biggest, most dangerous case of his career, Maybe he actually did need a long vacation to deal with all of this.
Yeah, he was just doing his lawyer thing. He wasn't going to look shook to those feds as far as he was concerned, probably. Or he was so shook, he had to chill out. Regardless of who they're giving up, nobody's going to feel it the way Peter's going to feel it in there. Your life is on the line. Your family's life is on the line. Them, it's just another day in the office. Chapo's nothing but a big promotion for them if they do it right. So they're all there trying to see what they can get out this deal.
They kept asking about numbers, like they couldn't get how big we are. They couldn't comprehend the level we're on. He paused to hold me tighter and then started getting worked up again. They were asking about street dealers, for God's sake, and customers. They wanted to know about Chicago, not Mexico. I was sitting there saying, I'll give you Chapo and Mayo, and they were like, tell us more about where your stash houses are. I was talking submarines and cartel members, and they were asking about all these little people.
It sounds like them. It sounds like their incompetence. He's giving you the biggest guy in the game, and you sitting here worried about Buddy 20 steps below him on the street somewhere.
Peter was usually so calm, but he could go from 0 to 10, with 10 being totally furious in seconds. He was at about an 8 right then. They're clueless. They have no idea what they're fucking doing. Can they handle this information? I'm about to give them Chapo, the most violent, dangerous, and powerful criminal in the world, plus everyone who's helped build his empire. This is bigger than Chicago. It's a global issue. It's fucking narco-terrorism. Yet they asked me to draw a diagram of who's on top in the cartels and where Junior and I fit in.
This is crazy.
He pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket. It was from one of those notepads you find next to a hotel bed with a ballpoint pen on top. Written in Peter's handwriting was this: Chapo, El Mayo, Peter, Jr., with lines connecting them. I was floored. Fuck. Yeah, right? All this time I thought they knew everything about us, that they were building this huge case against me and Junior and could grab us at any minute. And
nope, that was federal First 48. As you can see from First 48, they don't never got nothing. There's always somebody that got to tell them something for them to have anything. I think they'll step over dollars for dimes. I don't know if they even wanted to play with them big boys. Like he said, they're asking about street-level dealers on this side.
And they knew jack shit. They're in over their heads. I finally couldn't take it anymore and said, you're going to do this my way. If you want information out of me, this is the way we have to do it. Did they agree? Yes, they had to. They have to. Everyone in that room understood how important informants are, and that a huge case like this doesn't just fall into their laps. I worry that they aren't grasping the complexity and how huge this case is going to be. I don't think they realize that we can dismantle everything, like the entire North American drug trade. We can bring in Chapo if we do this right.
Maybe they looked at it like these guys are feeding us pie in the sky. It's quite possible that they didn't believe them and they were like, these guys are selling us a dream. Tell us about something we can go get right now. Who's dude on the corner? We go get dude right now.
Olivia. Junior and Peter knew they could be the most important informants the feds had ever encountered. The work they were going to do wasn't just a matter of law and order. It was about changing their lives and the world around them. Yet right from the beginning, they knew they were taking a leap of faith, praying that everything would work out for the best. There were no promises, no sense of security, and absolutely no guidance. And, unfortunately, when they started to record, things didn't get much better.
On their own.